Welcome to the 10 Years Out podcast. My 10 years out specifically, but this podcast is stories from my queer community, things that we have learned since we have come out. I am your host, Sam. My pronouns are she, her, and I identify as queer. And I have the immense pleasure of talking today to my dear friend, Dr. Megan Gandy.
Hello. So
Thank
happy to be
you
here.
for joining me.
Yes.
So, first things first, what are your pronouns? How do you identify? And how long have you been out?
Yeah, pronouns are she, her, hers. I identify as a cisgender lesbian, and I have been out since I was 23 years old, which is 2005.
Sweet. So, a few years.
Yeah, I got a couple years under my belt.
So
Yep.
far, I think you've been out the longest of anyone I've talked to.
Well, that's pretty cool. I
Yep.
feel like that's an honor.
You might have twice as much to say.
I do have a lot to say, but that may or may not be related to how long I've been out.
So, what do we need to know about your story before we get into everything that you've learned since you've come out?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing, the most important, is that I grew up pretty much from in the womb, a fundamentalist evangelical Christian. And so that kind of paints my story in a very distinct way. And, I think that there's probably a lot of people out there that can relate to that story. So, my parents raised me in a Christian space that was very distinct. It was very distinct in that it said that everybody else in the Christian world has it wrong and we have it right. And it's not just we have it right, but my specific family has it right. So, like, my uncle had a revival when they were in their teenage years, and he saved everybody that he knew. And he became a pastor. And then he created a church. And
Oh,
my
wow.
parents went to that church. So we kept it in the family, which
Mhm.
is unrelated to the fact that I am born in West Virginia. um, and so my upbringing was very much focused on, like, let's believe this very, very narrow set of beliefs about Christianity. Not just that God is love, or that, like, Jesus died to save our sins, but also, like, all of these other Christians have it wrong, so to speak. And so that painted my story when it came to my decision to come out. Because it was a big mental shift for me to
Yeah, for
believe that
sure.
there could be other Christians that could have things right
Yeah.
about the world and about being Christian and about being gay. So I was definitely the kind of kid that, like, really was a people pleaser, wanted to do the right things, and so, like, following the laws and the rules of the church was like my jam. Like, I wanted to do everything right. So I became very engrossed in this very particular culture very quickly, and I was immersed in it, not just because of that nature that I had, but also because I did know from a very young age that I was gay. And I knew from a very young age that it was a very bad sin, according to my faith that I was raised in. And so I kind of had that kind of monkey on my back, so to speak, that really led me to feel like I needed to overperform or invest in Christianity to make sure I was the best Christian possible, so that God would overlook the fact that I was gay. So, I spent a lot of my years just kind of struggling with knowing that I have this attraction that I couldn't get rid of, and also knowing that it was very antithetical to my core beliefs. I was super Christian. I went to the Focus on the Family Institute to learn how to be even better Christian. I worked at the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, and, was just kind of like as much in that world as I could possibly be. So right before I decided to come out, I had a kind of career shift. I was working an office job and just kind of going along with the motions. But then I decided I wanted to see if therapy or being a therapist was the right job for me. And so I got a job in the mental health field. And it was a job that required me to have kind of odd hours. It was a therapeutic wilderness camp for troubled adolescent boys, is how it was billed. It was basically a level 3 group home for kids that needed out of home placement. And so because it was a wilderness camp, it was, the kids were there 24/7. And so you had to be there 24, not 7, but I had to work 4 days in a row, 96 hours. And then I'd have 48 hours off. And so that's a 6-day recurring schedule. So basically I wanted to have the same days off every week. And that didn't work so well with my church schedule. So church schedule, it was Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday night, and Thursday night. And so like I was fully immersed in all of that. And suddenly I was not immersed in it at all. And so I just, I would say the vice grip hold that culture had on me loosened just a little bit. And I was able to kind of start to think about what else is out there in the world and what else do I want out of life, besides just like being as hardcore evangelical. And I kind of surveyed my life and said, well, things are going pretty well. I like this job, I have a place that I'm staying at by myself. I feel like an adult, and I had never dated, never kissed anybody, was very much like celibate. So I was like, man, I really wonder what it would be like to date somebody. My little 22 at the time year old self. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. But like, I wasn't comfortable going to bars and I wasn't really comfortable with myself very much anyways. And so at this time, online dating was pre-apps. We didn't even have really cell phones. We had like flip phones then. And so I used the Yahoo personal ads.
Nice.
Yeah. And it was just like, what you could picture personal ads being. But I remember very distinctly the process that I had to go through. It was like, create your profile. I'm like, okay, type in who you are, okay, your gender, then who you're seeking. And it said woman seeking man or woman seeking woman. And I was like, man, I really don't want to date a man. I really want to date women. Like, why would I start dating people that I don't want to date? And so just with the click of a button, I came out.
Sweet. That's a fast button.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what have you learned since coming out?
I've learned that there's such a wide variety of experience in the LGBTQ plus community. And mine is valid and it's important. And it also comes with certain privileges that other people don't have. For example, if I had come out as a teenager, my parents definitely would have sent me to some kind of reparative therapy, may have kicked me out, whatever the case may be. And that could have really changed the trajectory of my life. Mm-hmm. And I, when I came out, I did lose my family relationships and I lost my friend. My whole friend group was surrounded in the church. And so I did lose a lot. But I recognize the privilege in coming out as a young adult, gave me some of the privileges that other people don't have. And then also, as much as I've had to navigate the very real dangers of being an out gay person, I have not experienced any kind of physical violence. I've experienced some discomfort, and I've definitely experienced that kind of heart beating, heart thumping, kind of like, oh my God, what are they going to say when they know that I'm gay? And that does create a certain amount of emotional turmoil and trauma. but I haven't been physically assaulted.
Yeah.
Um, and I think just with the news here recently of people going to freaking Target and destroying merchandise that's
Mm,
for Pride Month, and just thinking about how much fear people live in. That I'm included in that because I'm in the LGBTQ plus community, but I think I have a certain amount of privilege. I'm cisgender. People that aren't cisgender face more violence and more
yep.
threat of violence. And so just kind of recognizing that, like, yeah, it hasn't been an easy ride. It's been a challenge, but I feel really privileged to be able to be out and to be in a safe place.
Yep.
And I think another thing that really made me feel that way was winning marriage equality. You know,
Mm.
at the time I was married. I've gotten gay married and gay divorced. I've had the privilege of doing both. Um, and I just, having same sex marriage codified in law, um, that was just, that solidified so many privileges for me as a gay person that I'm really grateful for, and that I recognize is so missing from our transgender and gender diverse, yeah, friends and loved ones.
Yeah.
Um, and that's really, whenever I think about coming out and being out, for me, it's always about visibility and making a difference for the people that can't be out, or the people that don't have those privileges.
Yep. And especially right now when so much is being taken away or threatened to be taken away
Mm.
from trans people. Um, I think it's good if we can give them a platform and
Hmm.
as cis people and
Hmm.
also fight for them.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, we've got to use our privileges to do that.
I know that you have gone to the Capitol here in West Virginia a couple of times this year, I think,
Hmm.
um, to speak about issues in front of the legislature.
Hmm.
Was that something that you got involved with and learned since coming out, or like as part of your job? I'm sure it's all
Hmm.
combined because
Yeah.
you're one person.
Indeed. Yeah, I so to give your listeners the context, I was trained as a clinical social worker, which means I did mental health work, and then I went to get my PhD, and now I do research and teaching. And a lot of my focus is on LGBTQ plus people and the issues that we face. And one of those, since moving to West Virginia, has been trans and gender diverse people's access to healthcare. Um, and so, I think your question, um, where where did that drive come from, kind of comes at both personal and professional.
Hmm.
Um, so I think one of the most ironic things about my upbringing was that my parents kind of instilled in me this sense of justice and this sense of needing to fight for social justice, while not calling themselves liberals or not calling themselves Democrats or not even subscribing to any of those kinds of things, but just kind of recognizing that there's injustices in the world that we need to do something about. And so I kind of carried that from my Christian years into my post Christian years. Um, but I also, social work trains people to be advocates and trains people to know when and how to show up for marginalized communities.
So, since coming out for me, it was the first time that I was aware of laws trying to tell me what I could or could not do, just because of sexual identity. And
Mm-hmm.
now, as a woman, I mean, we are also in the US having to deal with laws that are governing what we can and cannot do with our bodies. It really did, coming out for me really did change the way that I felt either protected or unprotected by the laws.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big shift in my life.
Mm.
because previously like laws had been there for bad people and like
Mm-hmm.
to like protect me, you
Mm.
know, to try and protect people.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as I wasn't straight, as soon as I realized I wasn't straight,
Mm.
uh, there were some laws that could either protect me or threaten me,
Mm.
and not because I'm a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm.
that has been an interesting shift in my personal life with regards to this issue. And now,
Mm.
like, yeah, if I were trans, there would be more things threatening me,
Mm-hmm.
and not because I'm harming anybody, but
Yeah, that's such an interesting shift. I think that's one of the reasons why I think we see so many LGBTQ plus people being more socially conscious. Just because when you go through something like that, it makes you more aware of the
mhm,
ways that the system is not designed to support the good guys and punish the bad guys.
right,
And just how broken it really is. But you don't really know that until you have a lived experience in it, or unless you were raised to understand that. And
right,
I think, both of us being born and raised in majority culture, white America, we
mhm,
had lots of privileges that we were born into. And so it does take some of those identity shifts or life shifts to kind of jar us out of that privilege fog, I guess, and kind of
yeah,
say, like, oh, yeah, here's these really unfair things that happen.
yeah,
Um, yeah.
yeah. So I'm kind of thankful that I had that paradigm shift, even though
Hmm.
it's not necessarily a safer one. It doesn't
Hmm.
necessarily make me safer, and it doesn't
Hmm.
necessarily make me more comfortable.
Hmm.
But I'm
Yeah.
glad to see the full picture,
Hmm.
or a fuller picture
Hmm.
of what laws can do.
Yeah. Well, and that just reminds me, I'm reminded of a friend, Cynthia, who is a professor in Tennessee, and she just loved to say, like, being gay is awesome. Being gay is awesome because it opened your mind to so many things that you were
Hmm.
just totally clueless to otherwise. And I
Yeah.
I love that. It's like, yeah, being gay is awesome because it makes us kind of badasses. Like we understand things and we understand the nuance of life and the challenges of life so much better.
When marriage equality was passed, I had no clue that was even like that was even happening until it happened. Like I was so
Hmm.
far
Hmm.
removed from political movings, and that was really soon after I came out. That was like 2 or 3 years. I don't remember exactly, but it was really, really soon after. And so I wasn't even paying attention yet to what was happening in the political sphere. And so
Hmm.
one day, like I'm going into the co-working space, and I hear on the news like that marriage equality has been passed. And like people are texting me, and I'm like, ah, I didn't even know this was on the docket. Like, but all of
Yeah.
a sudden,
Yeah.
my life was changed, and the
Mm.
possibility for my future was changed.
Mm.
And this thing that
Mm-hmm.
I thought was pretty much off the table, like legally speaking, was
Mm-hmm.
suddenly on the table. And I realized, oh my gosh, this is super
Mm.
impactful. And like, I cried, and but
Mm.
uh, I was so unaware. And
Mm. Yeah.
I didn't even realize what it would mean for me until I had it.
That's a great example of just the ways that our lives can change in an instant by policy.
So, what do you wish people understood?
I think I really do wish that people understood that our rights are never a given. Our rights are something that we unfortunately have to fight for. And I think for those younger people um, who have only grown up under the law of marriage equality, they may take advantage or may not realize the full struggle of what everyone went through. I mean, with
Yeah.
um, everything that people went through before they could have their marriages legally, recognized, and just
Right.
knowing that, and I think we see with the Roe v. Wade stuff, that our rights can be taken away so quickly,
Yeah.
and so it's really important for us to be socially and civically minded, so because our rights are really important, and nobody is going to show up for us but us. Hopefully, other people will, and obviously, we need allies and we need other communities to do that. And that's
Right.
actually where our greatest power lies in joining together with other communities for our shared struggle.
Yeah, I've been thinking about a lot lately.
Mm.
That okay, they're coming for the trans people first, you know?
Hmm.
Who's next?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's scary. I mean, we've seen that happen in a few states already. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think that just being a visible ally is really important. But also, reading the local news, finding out local politics, I think is a really important thing for people to do. Get involved with local advocacy organizations. Um, just small things that we can do to show up for for each other.
Yep, I agree. If you could go back to your past self, what would you tell yourself?
Hmm. Like past pre coming
Pre
out.
coming out. Yeah.
Oh man, wow. So many things. First of all, number one, I will meet Jennifer Knapp and I will get to play on stage with her.
Love it.
And that would be, yeah, that was definitely a life changing moment for me. I would tell myself to trust myself more.
Mm,
That's one thing that unfortunately my version of Christianity didn't teach me. It taught me that I was a sinful person, that I couldn't be trusted, and especially because I was a woman, I couldn't be trusted. Um, and once I started to trust myself and believe in myself a little bit and trust my intuition, that's when my life started to become more congruent and become more authentic in who I was. Anybody out there that's listening, if you know who you are, trust that and know that it's okay to be who you are.
yep.
And it's actually pretty awesome. You're kind of a badass for being who you are. And you should be celebrated for who you are. Well, and you think about just how much growing up in a heteronormative, cisnormative culture, we don't have the kind of role models that help us be like, oh yeah, that's who I am, and
Mm-hmm.
of course, absent role models, we also have the negative messages coming in. So,
For
um,
sure.
yeah, I think that's why, having these messages for younger people is so important.
Well, thank you to all the listeners for another episode of listening. And thank you, Megan, for coming on and being a guest and telling your story.
Absolutely.
I've enjoyed it a lot.
Oh, good. It's been really my pleasure and my privilege to be here talking with you. I really appreciate it. It's a great idea. I'm glad to have been a part of it.
Megan, do you have anything, a quote or something that you'd like to send us out with?
Yeah. One of my favorite music artists, Jennifer Knapp,
Woo
wrote a
woo.
song called Stone to the River. And one of the lyrics just really hits me every time. It says, I know it's not easy, and I'm sure it's not grand when you're trying to keep faith in your fellow man.
Mm. Oof.
Yeah.
All
Yep.
right.
So keep the faith. Know you're not alone.
Yep.
We're in this together.
All right. So until the next episode, people, keep fighting for those who are marginalized and their rights, and keep loving on people even if it's hard. All right, bye.
Bye.